It looks like we're all okay on YouTube.
Yeah, I've just got a message come up to say that we're live streaming, so on YouTube. So Sarah, we have one attendee. That will be Sarah Williams so far. You know Sarah. She's joined to make sure that we didn't have any problems getting it onto on YouTube and so on. So thank you, Sarah. Oh, cheerio. Sarah said cheerio.
That was easy. Right, should we go?
We don't have any of the other attendees yet, but it is 7 o'clock.
It's 7 o'clock, according to Mickey Mouse. Right, let's go. I'm sort of saying this, and there's only us here, which is a bit strange. Oh, well, I suppose I've got to do it.
We are live streaming, so people...
Okay. Thank you all for joining our online planning advisory committee meeting. Please bear with us if there are any technical issues. If the meeting has to be altered for any reason due to technical or other reasons, the minutes will be posted on our website as usual. Please be aware this meeting is being recorded and streamed live. If you don't agree to this, then we would kindly ask you to leave the meeting. All attendees are automatically muted unless asked to speak. Attendees will not be able to see how many people have joined the meeting. So far, we have no attendees. The protocol will be for attendees to pose questions and comments through the Q&A board. Attendees are not visible on video. Attendees' names will become visible on the questions board for the record if the question is answered. If attendees would like to answer their question directly, we will attempt to enable them to join the meeting via video or audio if they prefer. Please note that this element will be recorded and streamed. Councillors, if you wish to comment or ask a question, please physically raise your hand so I can clearly see you and I will select you at the appropriate time. Similar voting councillors, please raise your hand until the vote has been recorded by Jane and Hannah. Jane will clerk as normal and help ensure we don't miss any important questions and attempt to show plans and photos on the screen where necessary, and Hannah will take the minutes. So without further ado, agenda item 1.
Sorry, can I just point out that we have now been joined by 3 attendees who may have missed your comment about the recording and streaming.
Okay, right. Good evening, attendees. Just to make you aware, this meeting is being recorded and streamed live on YouTube, I believe. So if you don't agree to this or don't want this, then kindly please leave the meeting. Okay, and we'll now go on to agenda item number 1. Questions, comments, and information from the public and councillors. And these are questions that don't necessarily refer to items that we will be discussing on the Appendix 1. So, any questions from the attendees at this stage?
We haven't received any, but if there are any, could I ask them to put that on the questions and answers board, and then I will notify Steve what we've received.
In which case, go on to questions from councillors. From councillors? No, John did. No, okay. one thing I have been asked to do is that the Frome Town Council have drafted a statement regarding.
Sorry, I beg your pardon. I was trying to hit the button. I hit the wrong one. Is this where I can sort of mention the question about parking, the letter consultation from Somerset County on parking on Weymouth and Park Road? Is this now?
Far away.
Okay, so I think the main issue is that there have been some concerns around the questioning about the data within the survey that was contained. But our main concern was also, as a town council, is that traffic restrictions on these roads will push traffic onto other roads. And Park Road is a perfect example of that, where all the residents can't park on the road anymore. And they weren't included in this consultation. They were included in the original consultation, but they were not included in the remedy. And I think, for starters, that whole group of people would very much like to be included in the plan so that they could have permits. And I don't know how we best express that as a council. So I'm actually asking for advice from Jane.
Thank you.
There's that question. I just don't know how this idea of restrictions in just very limited areas of town by Somerset affects how we think about what should be happening with parking rather than just pushing it around town. That's my question.
I'm not sure that we as a council have actually discussed that in any detail. The initial parking permit scheme was, I think, requested by County Councillor John Clark to be looked at. And as I understand it, the residents of Weymouth Road voted, or enough of them voted, so that that scheme could be implemented. Part of the process that Somerset County Council has to go through is then to notify adjoining streets that this is happening, and to ask them, taking into account possible displacement, whether or not they want to be included in that scheme. It's at their discretion how far they actually, where do you stop? How far do you go? So I suppose the answer to one of the questions is, what if you feel that Park Road should also be given the opportunity to be included in that? We can certainly go back and advise that that's the case.
Well, they reported to me that they were part of the original consultation, but they were then not included. And given that one of the main reasons residents began complaining about this issue recently was the arrival of the new school, the Steiner School, now the new school, because of the morning traffic and afternoon traffic, which just got worse and worse. And Park Road is most affected by all that as well. And also the growing office space down at Gavin Eddy's place. So anyway, I think if we could do that as a council, that would support the letters that all the residents are already writing.
Yeah, so I will go back to Steve Deacon, who's the officer leading on this at Somerset County Council, and I'll ask him why Park Road wasn't included in the second part of this, and if they can be, and I will feed back to you his response. The other question about how do we feel about it as a council, I don't know, because that's not something that we've discussed council-wide, but I think it's really for the residents in this instance that's what they wanted, and they took it to county council. It wasn't something that we necessarily discussed as part of the parking review that we looked at. I don't know.
No, it's just that the town council has had a role because it convened a meeting, a few years back originally about the idea, and the issues about just pushing traffic around came out then. And I think that's it's really persuasive, but also from our point of view, the access to the park. We do not want that to be limited by the parking restrictions that are there, because there are a number of people who need to use vehicles to get to the park. Access to the park, and I think we don't want that to stop because we want the park used.
So as I understand it, the area of parking by the park will be free for the first hour. You will still have to get a ticket, obviously, so that they can see that how long you've been there, and then there is a fee for this second hour. I can't remember how much that is, but they're also going to be putting £2, Mark's in, but they're also putting in an extra disabled bay right close to the park entrance, which obviously there'll be no fee for that. So I think what that will do, or I think what their intention was, it will stop people from parking there all day, and enable people who just actually want to park there to use the park for a short period of time to do that. So I hope that will actually be better, but obviously, you know, you're more familiar with the area than me.
We'll see. Thank you very much, Jane.
Sheila.
Sorry, does that mean then that if they're going to have to get a ticket, are we going to have parking ticket machines all the way up Weymouth Road and Somerset Road?
There will only be one at the top, close to the area where they would have to pay to park,
Right.
as I understand it. But I can check. I can check
on the
that.
corner with the park there. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. So, yeah, as I was saying, regarding the retreat, Frome Town Council have drafted a statement which I will read now. Frome Town Council is disappointed that the owners of the land around the retreat have refused to meet with us until a successful resolution of their planning application, which in our view is pointless, given that we want to discuss the application with them. The land at the retreat, the Wallbridge, is subject to a planning application to build 4 houses and workshop, which Frome Town Council objected to. There is another contentious issue in this popular and beautiful part of our town, that of a footpath alongside the river, which the developer has blocked. This footpath has been in regular use by local people for more than 20 years, and we urge the developer to unblock it while the application to recognise it legally as a public right-of-way is being determined by Somerset County Council. The London-based owner and their Bath-based developer are fully aware of the importance of the Riverside Walk as detailed in Frome Town's neighbourhood plan and Mendip District Council's local plan, and are knowingly rejecting local development policies. Councillor Steve Tanner, chair of Frome Town Council's Planning Committee, said, "We feel Mr and Mrs Sutton and their developers' insistence on blocking access and refusing to discuss this is unhelpful. We can only assume that they intend to block the footpath permanently. We believe that the footpath will be designated a legal right-of-way by County Council, and blocking it is removing a very popular and well-used walk for many residents of Frome. The people of Frome deserve better than this and have shown a wonderful community spirit in these difficult times. The ability to walk along the river, as they've done for years, is important to local people and supports physical and mental well-being. I say, shame on you, Mr and Mrs Sutton. Frome Town Council believes that the long-standing Riverside Path is already an existing right-of-way, and ask the developer and the owners to give an immediate assurance that it will be reinstated and retained." There you are.
Steve, can I just add that Anita sent her apologies. She's having trouble with her internet, but will join as soon as she can.
Okay, thank you. Agenda item number 2, apologies for absence and declaration of members' interests. Paul.
I need to declare an interest on planning application number 311 Welsh Mill House. Although I'm not actually involved in this particular application, the applicant is a client of mine in work, so I declare an interest on that.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you. No other declaration of interests? Excellent, thank you. To agree the minutes of the meeting held on the 14th of May 2020, the draft minutes were circulated by Hannah. Has anybody got any comments on those alterations? No. Jane, do we have to propose and second those? Okay, could I ask for someone to propose them, please? That's John. Seconder, please. Rich. And all those in favour? Right,
That's unanimous.
it's unanimous. Thank you.
Can I also just say that we have a message from Helen Kay. She is saying that she has seen the Frome Town Council statement online on the Mendip Planning portal. Is this statement the same? Which she thinks not, and is it publicly available? So this, what you've seen online are our comments as the Frome Town Council Planning Advisory Group as we were then. This is a separate statement that has been written and I believe is being sent to the Frome Times, I think.
Okay.
Yeah,
Well,
so
yeah. Well, and others, hopefully.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Helen says, okay, thanks.
Great, excellent. Okay. Item agenda number 4, to consider major plan applications received in appendix number 1. Jane, do you want to introduce, have we, who have we got?
We have Lee Hopkins as an attendee, who I believe is the applicant. I'm not sure if he wants to say anything regarding his application at this point.
Shall we look at that application first then?
Yeah, we can do that.
Everyone okay with that? Okay, Jane, do you want to introduce that one?
Yeah, so this application is at Mendip House, Welshmill Road. It's an application for trees covered by tree preservation order. The full description is Norway spruce to be felled due to decay within the main stem and proximity to the road. Replant a native standard elsewhere as the site is overcrowded. And to fell a group of Lawson cypress trees due to their poor condition, overcrowding, damage and proximity to the road, and to replant with hedging, which will be maintained. I know you've all looked at the application so that you're familiar with where it is. So the trees are already covered by a preservation order, and the application is accompanied by a tree surgeon report, which does advise felling all the trees. And that's about as much as I can tell you. I suppose the question is, are we happy to support that application, or has anybody got any concerns about the felling of any of the trees?
Lizzie.
So just to confirm that the trees are covered by a tree protection order.
They are already covered by a tree protection order. The one of them has a group protection order on it, so they would have been given a TPO for their overall impact on the amenity of the area and their value to the landscape, etc., rather than each one being individually have a tree preservation order on it.
Does that mean it's all or nothing, Jane, on the group trees?
No, it doesn't mean that some of them or all of them couldn't be felled if the tree officer felt that that was suitable. It's just that rather than individually putting a separate order on a group of, let's say, for example, 10 trees, it's easier and it makes more sense to just have one order that covers all the trees. But the effect is the same.
Yeah, okay, thanks. John?
Yeah, just to point out that in the past few years, actually, 2 Lawson cypress have fallen actually up here in Victoria Park, and they look to be around the same era of planting. It wouldn't be surprising if they all came at that time. And the thing about them is that some of them are fine, but some of them want to split. So just picking up on what was last said, maybe we could at least recommend that they do a more individual survey of some of these trees so that some of them could be kept, because they've been around for a long time. But anyway, I'm just thinking through that.
The survey that's been submitted does actually assess each individual tree. One
I
thing
know, I'm looking at that.
Yeah. One thing that I should also point out is that the land adjoining this site, which is in the ownership of the town council, has recently, the trees there have been covered by a group tree preservation order, so that whole frontage of trees, if you like, along Welshmill Lane is now under a preservation order. And we have a comment posted from Helen Kay. I don't know whether you want to invite Helen to speak, or you just want me to read out what she's posted.
Yeah, invite Helen to speak. Yeah, why not?
Yeah. Hannah, can you make Helen a...
I don't know how to speak. She's
And you should be able to speak now. You just need to unmute yourself.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to say that the tree surgeon reports, I mean, I've seen them when they go to planning committee at Mendip. They are done on behalf of the applicant. And I just wondered if there was any way to get a second opinion. But that would mean that somebody would have to pay for it. I don't know how Mendip, I don't know enough about how Mendip deal with them when they come in. If they think themselves, oh, this has got a tree preservation order on it, let me have another second look at this. And I should imagine that Mendip don't have the resources to send somebody else out. So really,
so just to be clear, when they score it poor, that's not there's no number to score. There's no technical thing. It's just a subjective judgment, because they're all listed judging that was poor. So remove. How's that work? I guess.
Okay, that's all I wanted to ask.
To answer Helen's question, so the Mendip's tree officer, Bo Walsh, who will be dealing with this application, he will look at the tree surgeon's report. He'll also do, well, I assume he will do a site visit under the current circumstances if it's safe to do so. He obviously is a very experienced tree officer, and he probably will know the arborist who's carried out the report, and if he has concerns about that report, I believe he can request an independent one to be done. I can't say whether or not he will do that in this case, but I believe that is within his power, although I'm not aware that happens very often.
Okay. Rich?
May not hear me, I'll try hard.
You can hear you, don't worry.
See if we can do something about, maybe not all 10 of those trees need to go, perhaps just a few of them, just thin them out. They are a little bit close together when I went to have another look. So I think that might be something that needs doing, perhaps. And I think you know my objections to the big tree. But that I would suggest, Bo having a look on site, and his opinion I'll go with. You know, if he thinks they are all in poor condition, then fine. But if it could be that you just thinned them out so that maybe there were 4 left or something like that, and they would grow really nicely, make a nice screen of some sort, then I would go with that.
Okay, thanks. Any other comments? No. Okay. So I think in terms of our response, obviously we sort of will go with whatever Bo says at the end of the day. But I think it does seem, personally, I think it does seem a lot of trees coming out in one go, and maybe you know, we'd like to explore if they can be thinned rather than all come out. Jane.
Would you like me to suggest a response?
Yes.
So we we can say that we would prefer to see some thinning of the trees rather than complete felling. However, if the tree officer agrees that this is necessary in line with the arboricultural report, then we would support that work.
Perfect. Okay.
Somebody
Do I have someone? Oh, go on.
Yeah.
Oh,
I was just
yeah.
going to say somebody will need to propose that as a response.
Could somebody propose it, please? John, and somebody second it? Rich, and can we vote on that, please?
Okay, that's unanimous. Thank you.
Unanimous. Thank you. What's next, Jane?
Sorry, I was just writing down my response.
Oh, yes. Okay, carry on. Oh. I think we've done 303, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So application number 303 on our list, and this is the application at the T.H. White's site on Vallis Road. The application description is to raise the existing levels and contours of disused ground to form a new parking area. You may recall that we saw this a few months ago. For Anne's benefit, if she is familiar with the T.H. White's site, yes, she's nodding. Behind where the buildings are, there is a separate piece of land that was formerly used as a waste disposal site. So essentially it's filled up with rubbish. It's been capped and relatively levelled off. Prior to this application coming in, there was an application some years ago for 58 houses on the site adjoining the road, which was approved in outline. And the piece of land that we're now talking about, there was a separate application on there for that to become an area of open space. That was also approved. And there was a legal Section 106 agreement that went with that to say that the town council would take over that piece of land and run it and maintain it, etc. The application that we saw a couple of months ago for the exact same thing was refused on the basis that it didn't have an ecology report to support it. The application, we also objected to the first application on the basis that the use of the site as a parking area for HGVs and trailers wouldn't be compatible with a housing development on the land at the front. And we were also concerned about the visibility splay because the application for the housing required the visibility splay to be upgraded. That's a very short précis of our objection. So this application has now come in and is accompanied by the ecology survey. However, the ecology officer has put in a holding objection on the basis that it's not clear whether the material that they're going to use to level off the car park will leach into the woodland and have any impact on that. I noticed from some of the comments that I've had from you that there was some confusion about what was going on here. So just by way of perhaps trying to explain it a bit more, the original application for the housing development stated that improvements were required to the access to make it suitable to serve a residential development. And the previous application to this one for the car park, there was no highway objection. And I think that was based on the fact that there wouldn't be an increase in the trip generation from its last use by TH White being used for the purpose of HGV parking. So from how I've interpreted that, it means that if it was going to be a residential development with 58 houses, the traffic impact would be far more significant than it would be for the HGVs and vans that they intend to use on this site. And therefore they don't require the access or visibility display to be upgraded. There is, in my mind, still a little bit of confusion about the approval for the residential element. On the application for the car park that was previously refused, the case officer stated in his report that the application for the housing had expired. Now I've been back and I've checked the outline consent, and the condition actually says after the expiration of 5 years, and that was approved in March 2016. Now I think that's an error because it should be 3 years. However, it does say 5 years, and actually that might make it binding, but I can't say that for sure. So I'm actually unclear as to whether or not the residential consent actually still valid. But irrespective of that, I suppose the question is, bearing in mind all of those issues, do we still want to go with our original objection, or do we think that some of our concerns have been answered? And also, I think we need to take into account that it will offer employment opportunities. So over to you to discuss.
Yeah. Any comments, Rich? And then John.
I think it will offer some employment opportunities. It probably is. It's not a permanent feature, it doesn't have to be. I think as long as the slopes are kind of protected with the trees on, we know that underneath is an old dump, so anything on top of it might affect that in some way. So if it's done carefully with the idea that it's not going to be permanent, and certainly we don't want it to be an eyesore or anything like that, but you know, if it's a kind of fix for a year or 2 years until something else comes along, maybe we can't object to that.
Okay. John?
Yeah, so mine's sort of related to what Rich said. For me, it's about the contamination on the site. And usually on these sites, you start moving stuff around, you start stirring it up, and then there's the leaching thing. And I'm not exactly sure what is the most lethal threat in terms of contamination coming through the site. I've gone through those maps and reports, and I'm not an expert. But it would be good to know if there's anything of concern that's out of the ordinary, but I don't know. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Mark?
Yeah, a couple of questions. Is there, this is at the back of the site, furthest away from the road.
Yeah.
The part that could be seen from across the valley for the people who live at Innox Hill or Watcombe Fields or any of that area. Is there any mitigation? Is there going to be a bund or planting or landscaping to mitigate that? Second question, if this is at the back, I understand, so that leaves the bit which has currently got the buildings on, the old TH White buildings. That's the bit I assume is possibly going to become housing one day. How is the lorry access, which will be fairly constant, going to affect the people who build houses there, or the people who live in the houses that are built there?
Jane?
So whether or not it will, I've been to site, and there are quite high banks surrounding the sort of the area where the car park would be. So I don't know whether you would actually be able to see that from from that viewpoint, and there are trees, I think, from memory there. I actually don't know whether you would be able to see it, but I guess that's something that we could make reference to.
Yeah, could we ask them to pay attention to that too, if there is any what's detriment to the visual amenity, or however we talk in this committee, is that we need to deal with that.
Okay, thanks, Mark. Rich.
And it may be worth exploring if that slope, the whole slope of the trees and everything, could still possibly become like some kind of nature reserve or footpath that could be given or gifted to Frome Town Council in some way, given various provisos about pollution.
Okay, yeah, good point. Paul?
I just wanted to pick up on Mark's second point, which is about the front part of the site, or where the depot is potentially being residential. There still seems to be some confusion over this, because as far as I understand it, that site is actually for sale, potentially for residential. And although it's not actually residential at the moment, I think potentially, I mean, I might be wrong, but potentially our original objection that the two things aren't really compatible probably still stands. But the problem is that if the lorry depot gets its planning permission, that may mean that housing permission may be refused because of the lorry depot. I don't know if that would be the situation. You know, are you able to clarify that, Jane, do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think if this application is approved, and assuming that the application or the approval for housing has expired and they're required to submit a fresh application, then obviously the impact of the traffic and the noise and disruption that traffic will cause would be taken into account by the planning officer when determining the residential application, and also their environmental protection team would probably have something to say about that. I think I can't remember who said it now. Maybe it was Mark, but you know, maybe this is a temporary thing, and at the same time as we want to see some employment brought to the area, we don't want to lose out on the possibility of additional housing. So I'm thinking along the lines of that we can, or I can certainly point out the confusion over the whether or not that original outline application has expired or not, and that our concern that the approval of this application could impact on any future housing being brought forward, and perhaps suggest that a temporary permission is issued. If they are considering approving it, then that would be temporary, and then they would have the opportunity to renew that if they don't sell the site for housing, and you know, so that shouldn't impact on their business. But yes, I think it would impact on future housing on that site.
Yeah. Paul, did you want to come back on that?
No, I mean not specifically, but what occurred to me really is that, well, I totally agree. I think it would be really useful to clarify whether that planning application has expired. But the other one would also be really useful if the current landowner would actually clarify what their intention is for the depot area, because if their intention is actually to keep it as a depot and a distribution centre, something, then in a sense, I can't see any reason why we would object to the current planning application. But obviously, if the intention is to sell it for residential, that it kind of puts a completely different angle on this particular planning application. So some more clarity would be really useful. I don't know if we can ask for that.
I did ask that question previously when the application came in, I think it was around a March time, and I didn't get a very definitive answer. I think it was perhaps, you know, if somebody comes along and makes the right offer for the site, then yes, of course we'll sell it to them for residential development, but certainly they weren't prepared to give anything definitive. There's also a message from Helen on the chat. She's asking if I know whether it's designated as a mixed use in the local plan parts 1 or 2. I don't, off the top of my head, is the answer to that, Helen, I'm afraid. I'm not sure that it's actually a designated, what's the word I'm looking for? Allocated site. I would have to check that, but it is out. I think it's outside of the development boundary.
It's either it might be within or it might be immediately outside the development boundary. I'm not sure which.
But the principle of residential development there has been established by the previous application anyway. Yeah, so sorry. Oh, Helen's put, meaning is it employment land or not? Yes, so its last use it was as an employment site. So yes, it's currently designated as an employment site.
Okay, thanks. Lizzie.
Thanks, Steve. Moving away from that slightly back to the ecology side of things, just to note that the ecology assessment talked about, I want to say significance or importance, but the importance of the woodland and the surrounding woodlands, and talked about the need for the local planning authority to talk to Natural England about it. And I just wanted to make sure that we were clearly sending that message to our friends at the local planning authority. The other element that's in there is a lot of discussion about bats and about overnight nighttime lighting of the site and where lighting can go around the edges of the site. And what's not in the planning application that I could see were operating hours for the site. And it's almost the ecology assessment saying overnight it's got to be dark. But actually, if the site was proposed to be operating 24 hours, it would just be impossible. So a bit of clarification there would help, I think.
It will be lit at night for sure, you're right. Just go down to Foxy's Den.
It seems that we need quite a bit of clarification, Jane, on this one.
Yes. So what I have,
a lot of things that are sort of question marks, isn't there?
Yeah. So what I have noted is Mark's question on will the views across be impacted? Rich, it's a question about the footpaths and perhaps management of the banks and woodlands, whether or not that could be something that perhaps the town council could take on. The question of whether or not the original consent for the residential use has expired or not, and whether that will then impact on or whether the use as a car and trailer park impacts on the residential. Will Mendip contact Natural England as set out in the ecology report? And we also want some clarification on what the operating hours are, because lighting, more so during the winter months, would have an impact on the bats on the site. I could say that we too would like to put in a holding objection, subject to those questions that I've just listed being answered.
Yeah. Okay. Does someone want to propose that? Lizzie, seconder, please. Rich, all those in favour of the holding?
Okay.
Great.
That's unanimous. Thank you.
Very confusing, that one.
Okay, so the next application that we were going to look at was number 305 on our list, which is 20 Paul Street, and is for the replacement, replace part of a shop window to create a new door and corridor to allow for access to the existing residential flat above the existing retail unit. So this is a listed building application, and also the site is in the conservation area as well as being listed. There are also a few internal alterations, but they're not significantly listed. Hopefully you've all had a look at the application. So the frontage of the shop front was a bit clumsy, sorry. It is actually very symmetrical as it stands at the moment, and the proposal is, as I understood looking at the plans, to reduce the left-hand side bay down so that it will be able to incorporate a doorway access. As part of the application in their design and access statement, they have shown photographs of examples of other properties on Catherine Hill specifically, and a few other around the town, to show that this is, you know, quite common and has been done on lots of other shops. The examples that they showed where that had happened, it didn't appear that they'd lost the symmetry of the shop front itself, you know, inspected the glazing and so on, whereas this will impact on that. I think it would be a shame to lose that symmetry, but at the same time, you know, I do understand that they perhaps need to gain access to, or have a separate access, perhaps to comply with fire regulations to get to access the upstairs property. I'm not 100% sure about that, but you know, I'd like to hear your thoughts.
Paul.
Yeah, I think I'd like to. I kind of second Jane's view really on that. I can see why they want to do it, and I kind of, you know, I empathise with that. But I think it would be a real shame to lose. That's actually a really lovely shop front, and it would be a real shame to kind of spoil that symmetry and the look of that. I don't know. I mean, of course, there's not many alternatives. Although one just popped into my head that maybe actually, if there was a door put on both sides, we could keep it symmetrical. One door could be just a dummy, but you know, that's up to the designer, obviously. But yeah, I mean, as it is, I would be kind of reluctant to approve it, really.
Fair enough. Any other comments?
It is an incredibly tight location, so there's no other option for a door. I can't see.
I think it might also be worth noting the Civic Society comments, which I know that I've sent to you all and that you've all had sight of, and that I've printed off incredibly small. That's quite difficult to read. But yes, you know, they are talking. They are also talking about the loss of the symmetry, which is regrettable. But they have said it appears some character will be retained. The success of the proposed changes will depend entirely on the quality of the detailed design, which you know, I think sums it up really. And I don't think we can say much more than the Civic Society, and I would happily agree with what they've said. Perhaps repeat that.
By allowing this, are we creating another flat, another home in Frome? I mean,
no, there's already an existing. the accommodation already exists. I believe they access it through the interior of the shop,
Right. Okay.
which I think is occupied by the shop owner. But I guess what that does do is it make it difficult if they wanted to sell it off separately from the shop unit.
Fair enough. Lizzie, did you want to say something?
Going to say one other thought that I'd had as I was looking at it was, well, actually, if there was an issue, because they talk about security, if there was an issue about the kind of going through the shop, actually the current plan looks at putting an internal wall and creating a corridor from the new door. You could just put the internal corridor and have the door from the shop into the corridor if that was a thing, but that may not be practical. But I'm with what Paul said and what the Civic Society have said, to be honest.
Okay. Anyone else? Paul?
I just wanted to clarify because I think if I remember right, the Civic Society are not, they're not objecting to it in principle, which I can understand. I'm kind of on the fence slightly. I'm kind of leaning towards actually objecting to it reluctantly because I empathise with what they want to do, but yeah, from an aesthetic point of view, yeah.
I think Anita's got a question.
Sorry, Anita, I didn't see it.
I was just going to ask about whether the other people that have been putting the other photographs that were put forward, were they also listed buildings?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I mean, sorry.
So, Rich?
Yeah, I think, you know, if it's tastefully done and it improves access to the building, you know, sometimes we've got to, I guess, move with the times a little bit. It's not a shop, is it a shop?
Yeah.
Yeah. Resident.
It could be a resident, yeah. So I think I'd go with it. I'm on the fence with this as well. I think if it's done tastefully, it could work. But I don't object to such a weird one.
Sheila?
I just it has always been a tricky access, and I would have thought an incredible fire hazard actually, because when you go up those stairs you go straight into the kitchen, and I think having a better or an easier access that doesn't actually have to go straight into a shop is really important. And I think, like, I mean, I agree with what you said, Jane, and what the Civic Society say. It is a tricky thing and it's a shame, but it is a product of a very old building, and regulations change.
Okay, any other comments? Okay, seems that we're erring on the side of not objection, but just trying to make sure it's done tastefully and well and in keeping with the character of the area. Would that be a fair synopsis?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, sort of reluctant, yes.
Okay. Right. Jane, have you got anything written down that we can vote on yet, or?
Well, I mean, I had suggested that we, if you like, we reiterate the Civic Society comments. I can read those out in full, but I know that you've all read them previously. I mean, we can object because the issues that the Civic Society raised, you know, we could actually use those as grounds for objection, or, you know, as it seems that I think that the sense is that, again, we've got no objection in principle, but we are concerned about the issues that have been listed and would like to see it done well, to a good standard.
Yeah, I think that's
So the suggestion is that we raise no objection in principle, and then we reiterate the comments of the Civic Society.
Yep, that sounds good.
somebody needs to propose that.
Someone needs to propose that. Go on, someone to second that. Rich, a vote, please.
Okay, and that's unanimous. Thank you.
All right, we managed to get off the fence just about. I'm still on the fence, but there you go. Right.
And the next application that we are going to discuss is number 308 on our list, and this is for Kalo at Rosedale Walk in Frome. This application is for the erection of a 2-storey dwelling, and it says associated development, so landscaping, etc. You'll recall that recently we saw another application for Kalo, and this was for an extension to the property itself. We did object to that application because we didn't feel that the extension was necessarily right for this site. However, that application was approved earlier this week, and you will see from the plans for this application that the elevations actually included that extension. So this is to separate the land that is associated with Kalo and to build a completely separate dwelling in the grounds. And from the comments that I've had back, it seems to be that perhaps actually building a house, a separate house in the grounds wouldn't be so bad, but there is some concern about its proximity to number 8. Number eight, and how it might impact on that. So yeah, just like to hear your thoughts, or if you've got any questions.
Rich.
Yeah, I think it was my comment about it being close to number 8. I'm just looking at it again. I mean, I guess it depends on what number 8 think about that, really, doesn't it? It's hard to tell from the drawings. I'll just have another look. Maybe it's not as close as I originally thought. But so overall, I don't really have any objections. But that was my only slight concern at the time.
Lizzie.
I want to say something nice, because we're always about objections in these meetings. So
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Just to make note and to mention that their resource efficiency statement, which talks about energy in the building, was, to me, it was really good. It was really well thought through. It was ambitious. It looks like it's got a really well-intentioned sort of eco house mentality going through it, and I think that could be a really nice addition. I think, you know, the designer's ears next to Kalo, when that's sort of tarted up, it could actually be a really nice set of houses on that plot of land, which, as we talked about last time, hasn't really been doing very much for a long time.
Messy, isn't it?
Yeah.
Paul, sorry.
Okay, I'd like to say something good as well then. No, I think you know, personally, I quite like it. I quite support it. I think the design is, well, I quite like the design. It's fairly sympathetic to Kalo next door. And also having a flat roof, it does mean that it's actually kept lower than the adjoining, or the next house, number 8, I think it was. So it's relatively subtle. Personally, I would like to see something other than rendered, presumably block work or something. But yeah, it is as it is, and I think it's okay.
Great. Any other comments? Excellent. I think we raised no objection. Is there anyone else, unless any other thoughts on that? No? Okay. Do we have to vote on that, Jay? Yes, right. Someone propose that. John, thank you. Rich, second. Rich, thank you. All vote, please, on that. Excellent. Anita, are we going to vote? Yay, thank you.
That's unanimous, thank you.
Were we going to talk about 306, Jane, Weymouth Road? There was a bit of discussion about that.
We were, I just forgot to mention it.
No, carry on.
Okay, so this application is number 306 on our list. It's at 85 Weymouth Road, Frome. It's for the erection of a rear extension and a front porch, and the refurbishment of the side extension and conversion of garage. I did send around an image of the front of the property so that everybody was aware of which one it was when they were looking at the plans. And the concern I raised was with the flat roof extension at the front, taking out the sort of the matching bay window on the adjoining property, and the impact that would have on on the overall appearance of those two properties, and also the loss of another section of the front garden to accommodate a vehicle, which they are needing to do because they will lose the parking space from the loss of the garage. Obviously losing more of the garden space and having more hard surface in there, that just adds problems with soak away and all those issues. And I think there were some of the comments that I've seen back of that, did feel that it would actually disrupt the frontage of that property. And as we discussed earlier, we also know that there is going to be residence parking being introduced in Weymouth Road, and the potential for more on-street parking is, well, probably more so a problem for the applicant, actually, because it would mean that they ultimately would end up having to pay for a permit where they've lost a garage space. But yeah, so any questions or issues that anybody would like to raise on?
Paul and then John.
I kind of agree. I personally, I don't have any objection to the majority of this. It is really just that part on the front elevation there, with the kind of flat roof extension coming through right across the bay window, and the front door coming out to its outermost face. I think I would be okay with it, even with the kind of canopy, the flat roof canopy coming across the front, if the front door right where it is, and so that the bay window is still expressed somehow, because I think it would be a shame to lose, again, there's a bit of symmetry going on here, and it would be a shame to lose the symmetry of those two bay windows. But otherwise, I don't have any great objection. The other thing I just wanted to pick up on what Jane said about the extra parking. I think I agree it's a shame to lose garden space, but the extra parking space doesn't have to be non-permeable. It could be permeable, so it wouldn't necessarily add to runoff, etc. So maybe we can actually suggest that in our response.
Excellent, thank you. John.
Yeah, well, what I would say is also just down there, the majority of those old garages down there, people couldn't even fit in a new car into them anymore anyway. So the parking, I'm not sure, but I don't have any major objections about the development itself, because the window is an issue, but it's not that much of a remarkable facade in my personal view that is going to be spoiled by this. The thing about the parking, I'm not wild about that, but apart from that, I can't see a major objection. I think it will substantially enhance the use of that. The gardens behind the house are like 150 feet long down to the thing. So it's not like it's taking up a major part of the whole space.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments? Sheila?
Is there any issue or sort of objection to the sort of precedent that this might set up for other houses to do something similar? Does that worry anybody? Is that a problem? No? Fine.
Yeah, I must admit, I think it will set a precedent. Yeah, I think it could ruin. I just think it's a very, very big front extension. I have to admit, it's going to be out of character. But is that a reason to object?
But look, if you looked at the houses and then look at the whole region, the area around it, the houses themselves are out of character. So I would say,
yeah, fair enough.
All right.
Any other comments? Question? Rich, sorry, I didn't see you down there.
Just it's fun planning reason. I don't like it, but I can't object.
Yeah, that's sort of where I was heading. I mean, Jane, I mean,
It's a taste thing really for me, but I can't find any other reason to object to it. Possibly a recommendation that Paul just made about having a permeable surface, semi-permeable, whatever, so that you don't get any extra runoff off the boat. But yeah, I'm kind of very vanilla about it.
yes. We're all on the fence on these ones tonight, aren't we? Jane, have we got any? I mean, there is no real grounds to object, is there? I mean, we're going to be in the style council, aren't we, to a certain extent?
I mean, yes, you could say that the design is subjective and everybody will have their own personal view, but I do think if you were looking for grounds to object, that this design on that property is a reasonable ground to object on. However, if you don't actually want to object, we could make the response and saying that we would prefer to see the front door remain as it is, perhaps with a canopy over. I'm quoting Paul's words here.
Oh, no, I agree.
Thus facilitating continued expression of the bay window. We would also want to ensure that the creation of the additional driveway area was made from a permeable surface.
So we're not objecting as such, but we're requesting.
We can do that, yes. Yeah, if that's what everybody wants to agree on.
I mean, obviously they want to make it look nice. So if everyone says we want to make them look nice by doing that thing, then they'll maybe do that.
Lizzie?
I think it's one of those that if this was a flat front to the rest of the house and then a side extension and did massive stuff out the back, we would just be going, yep, absolutely, go for your life. And it's almost, and I don't know what the back of the house is like. So it's almost just push it back. And we could object and say, look, can you do this in a more subtle, sensitive way? Rather, because if we request, they could say no. And we've not achieved the thing, which is the facilitating the Dubry Watset of the bay windows. I think I'm more inclined to object than to.
Okay, interesting. Thank you. Yeah, Paul.
I'd just like to say that I don't think I would support objecting on the grounds of being out of character, because I don't really have a problem with a modern extension on an older building, whatever age. Actually making an extension distinctive, I would support. But as I say, I think this could be improved. But this kind of rather subtle response, perhaps for a planning application. So I would be inclined to not object, but then maybe with some advice.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, John.
I would urge you not to object, because if you just go 2 doors down from there, there's another brand new house. I think it's called Saverne. It's a house that was done up with a pool in the back. The doctor lived at the corner there, and it's all wood in front. And he's completely changed the facade of the front of his house. This is like 2 doors down from where we're talking about. It's part of that big house extension, and did a beautiful garden with a big parking. And he substantially altered the front of his house to create a different facade. The only difference is it wasn't part of a matching set. but the matching set was not spectacular. So I would say not to object to this, really.
Thank you. Any other comments? Rich?
A good thing about it, I suppose, is that it's just a one floor extension, so it's not going to impinge on next door. You know, they're not going to be overlooked or anything like that. So I guess that's probably better than having an extension out the back, which is 2 floors, 2 levels. I don't know, but yeah, I find it really hard to object to, but equally I find it really hard to say, oh, that's great.
Yeah. Any other? Jane, back to Jane.
do you want me to suggest a response?
Yeah, go on, have a go.
So we could say that we have no objection to the principle of the extensions. However, we would prefer to see the design changed, as Paul has said, so that the front door remained as it is, and perhaps with a canopy over, thus facilitating continued expression of the bay window, and the materials for the extra parking area should be of a permeable surface.
Yes, sounds good. Okay, can I have a proposer for that, please? Thank you. And a seconder? Mark, thank you. And a vote on that statement?
John got his hand up. Yep, that's unanimous. Thank you.
Thank you. Those were the only ones that we'd identified to discuss. Is there any other applications that anyone would like to discuss that's on the list? Sheila.
It was just the it's 310, which is all those trees in Kiefer Gardens. It seems a great shame to fell all of them, particularly for me, particularly the walnut tree, just because they are beautiful trees, and there doesn't seem to be a other than a crowded issue, anything else that's wrong with them. So I would be reluctant to agree all of them and suggest that they could actually consider retaining at least the walnut tree.
Okay. Jane, so I was looking at the stuff.
I will just read out the description if I can find it. Yes, so this is 20 Keyford Gardens in Frome. It's number 310 on our list, and the proposal is to fell 1 birch tree, 1 hornbeam, 1 beech and 1 walnut tree. And this application is for felling trees in a conservation area. So for Anne's benefit, apologies if she is fully aware of this, as it's her first time being a member of the planning committee. When an application is submitted to fell trees in a conservation area, it's not necessarily a planning application, it's a notification to the district council that there is an intention to fell those trees. What that then does is it gives the Mendip's tree officer the opportunity to determine whether or not he feels those trees are worthy of a preservation order. If he doesn't feel that they're worthy of a preservation order, then actually there are no other reasons for not allowing those trees to be felled. Having seen the photographs of these trees, my opinion is that they're not preservation order worthy. They're lovely trees, but they don't fall into the category of a preservation order, not necessarily even as a group. But you know, you may feel differently about that. So they're not necessarily applying to fell the trees. What they're actually doing is they're telling the district council that they want to fell these trees, and if they want to put preservation order on them, then they have to let them know that within. Sorry, the district council have to let the applicants know that within 6 weeks. And obviously, once or if a preservation order is then made, then the scrutiny for felling those trees is much more significant.
Thanks, Jane.
Jane, am I right in saying that any resident can actually apply for a preservation order on a tree?
Anybody can apply for a preservation order on a tree, yes. You don't have to be the landowner or anything.
So Sheila could apply for that preservation order, for instance.
She could, yeah.
Okay, thanks.
No?
I think we need to think about precedent. I'm looking at the photos of these little teeny weeny trees. And you start putting preservation orders on teeny weeny trees like this. Well, it's a Pandora's box. It sort of undermines the whole meaning of a tree protection order and what we're trying to preserve here. These are trees, so that my view, this is someone's private property. These are small trees. They're not that old. Maybe we could suggest they dig them up and move them off somewhere rather than just chopping them down, because they could probably get a root ball out, but that's too expensive. So anyway.
Sorry, I should have added that they have actually said as part of their application that they will replant other trees to replace those that have come down.
They were going to replant fruit trees, wasn't it? If my memory serves me right.
Yeah. I've just noticed that we have a question from Lee Hopkins on 310. Well, actually, it just says 310, so I'm not sure whether that is actually a question.
It's the number when we were looking for it.
Oh, right, okay.
Anita, did you want to say something? I thought you had your hand up.
Yeah, I was just really thinking, I mean, if these trees really are quite young, is there any benefit, seeing that we're planting so many trees, is there any benefit in asking Chris Stringer to go out and dig them up and replant them somewhere else?
Yeah.
Rather than lose them.
Jane, any thoughts on that? Rick? And then
I don't know. I don't know whether that's possible, if I'm honest. I don't know whether the trees would survive it.
Okay. Rich?
Jane, I don't move very easily at all. It'd be a big job, quite a large root ball, and you need some sort of crane to lift them out because they'll be quite heavy. I don't think that's feasible. They are quite young trees, and if they're going to replant with something else, in my opinion, okay, it's a shame, but I kind of tend to agree with Sheila. The black walnut would be worth keeping, but yeah, they're not what you might call not what I would call TPO
Okay.
tree.
Paul?
I was going to say much the same thing as Rich, really. I think they're small trees, but they're probably a bit too big really to dig up and move somewhere else. Well, certainly with ease anyway. So yeah, that's all I was going to say.
Thanks. I'm not that familiar with the size of tree roots as they age. So.
It seems as though we're sort of erring we'd like them to at least keep the walnut tree. That be a fair assessment, Rich?
Yeah, I think could we ask them that they reconsider the walnut tree and keep it, rather than just say we object? Can we just say reconsider the walnut tree, as it's kind of not a useful tree, but it's probably got more value than the others.
Okay. Any other comments on that, Lizzie?
Yeah, I think if they can reconsider the walnut, that's great. I think we also should think about the other precedent that we might be setting, which says that if a tree is small enough, you can chop it down. But if you chop down all the small trees, you never get big trees. So, you know, I think there is a balancing act of which trees are, of how we look after the young trees to make sure they become old trees. But save the walnut.
I don't know. I've been fighting the same set of plum trees for about 25 years. Okay, so.
Sounds like you've been reasonably successful if you're 25 years old.
Yeah, but they're still there.
So can I just clarify if you want that to be an objection, and that we would prefer to see the walnut tree retained, or a no objection, but we would like to see the walnut tree retained. I know it's a small difference, but it's important to me.
Objection, I think.
Okay.
Any other thoughts? No.
No objection. I don't agree.
You don't agree. You think it should be no objection?
I think no objection. But no objection. But we love your walnut. Why don't you protect that one?
Yeah, I think I'd go with John on that, to be honest. And it's unusual for me because I don't like losing trees at all, but I can see where it's a relatively narrow garden, looks like. And, you know, that those 4 trees together, if they're allowed to grow to a great height, could, you know, in a few years' time, overpower that garden. But the walnut looks lovely.
Okay. Any other comments? Okay, shall we, Jane, do you want to?
To be honest, I'm still not clear whether we're objecting or.
Yeah, I think let's vote on the no objection first.
Okay, so the first option is for a no objection. However, we would like to see the walnut tree retained.
So proposer Rich, second by Lizzie. So a vote on that. Right. Yeah, go on then. Okay.
Okay, so that's unanimous. Thank you.
I'm not a tree expert, so yeah. Okay.
Jane, have you seen Lee's comment now?
To ask whether or not 310 was going to be covered. So yes, yeah, which was this one that we've just talked about, Keyford Gardens. Yeah, thank you. So that just leaves the remainder of the applications that we haven't formally discussed, and that leaves me with the assumption that councillors have no objections to the rest of those applications. But I would need
please. Anita and someone second. John, can we vote on that, please? Thank you.
That's unanimous. Thank you.
Great.
So you need to formally close the meeting now, Chair.
Trying to get my agenda together. It was a paper moment. Thank you very much. That closes this meeting. The next planning meeting will be on the 25th of June, according to my notes. Okay. Thank you very much. Good night.
Thank you.
Thank you for my